We continue the Shir in Sichai Sanan, Sif Kufman Test, paragraph 149, which deals with the story of the Zion Betlers. The 13th final story, which, as Rabbi said, was the most important, the highest story ever told, and one that contains all these secrets of the Torah, of creation from the beginning of time to the end. We cannot go through the synopsis fully, just very briefly, that we're dealing with two children who were lost in the woods, and they grew up, they got married. While they were in the woods, starving, 7 betlers, 7 beggars came to them in succession, one after the other. Each bettler apparently seemed to have a physical defect. The first one was blind, the second one was deaf, the third one stammered, the fourth one had his neck was out of joint, the fifth was hunchbacked, the sixth was without hands, the seventh without legs. Each one of these 7 gave a bracha, a blessing, to these children. They also gave them food, bread. The children grew up, there was a wedding, large wedding, for this Chassidut Kala. At the time of the wedding, the Chassidut Kala recalled the incident with these 7 betlers, these 7 beggars, and they yearned very strongly. They yearned and cried for the reappearance of these betlers. During the 7 days of feasting, Shiva Simei Mishta, after the wedding, each day a different one of these betlers appeared. Now, these 7 betlers, as we explained very clearly, represented 7 greatest tzadikim possible. Actually, these 7 betlers were one. The tzadikim was comprised of all these 7 in one. For example, speaking of the Erampin, there was the Shishak Tzavos and the Malchus, the tennis baller. That one is complete with the Nikva. Is one. It contains the qualities, the Kedusha of all 7. So naturally, it goes without saying that the Tzaddik Emes who told this story knows about the secrets of these 7 betlers, is naturally the one who was these 7 betlers in one. And we had the first story of the blind bettler who actually showed that he was not blind at all. He had the greatest eyesight possible, just he did not waste the power of his eyesight to look at the mundane, base things in this world that do not count at all. And he proved that he lives long life, because his life is truly long. And the story that he told about the great eagle, which proved this point, this bracha of long life he now gave as a gift to the Chassidut Kala. That was on the first day. The story up to the second day, when again the Chassidut Kala craved and yearned for the appearance of the second bettler, the deaf bettler, who, when they cried, the tears brought into existence, or appeared in front of them, this second bettler. He said to them, "You think that I am deaf. In truth, I'm not deaf at all. I'm only deaf to the material items that exist in this world. The words that are spoken in this world are all words of suffering. People who complain about the shortage of material benefits, of wealth. I don't listen to that at all. To those words I am deaf." Rosenfeld explains that the reason why he said the world is filled with chesronos, shortages. Every person complains about lacking something. The whole world is one big complaint. The lack of something, in fact, to understand the words of this bettler, it was that each person lacks emunah, faith. If he would have faith, he'd find that he lacks nothing at all. There's nothing missing, because everything that a person needs is really there. Everything that happens to a person is for his benefit, because it is given to him by Hashem. And from Hashem there comes only good. Whatever a person has is good. There is nothing lacking if that person has the true degree of emunah, b'shleimus, complete emunah. Why then? What is the reason for this shortage? Why do people complain? Because there is a lack of true faith. Each person has something missing due to the amount of faith that is lacking. That which is missing for perfection in emunah. Therefore, we find that those who complain most are those machakrim, the philosophers, the ones who criticize the world, the ones who criticize everything in it, the ones who bemoan everything that exists. They will find fault with everything. They'll show there's no pleasure possible. They suffer throughout their entire lives. And this is because in philosophy there lies the deepest degree of kefira, lack of emunah. Now, a person who has this philosophy, this lack of emunah, cannot find any happiness in life. That person who avoids this fakira, he lives with simplicity and pure faith, can find simcha, satisfaction, in the midst of the worst suffering, the highest degree of suffering. You'll find that a person who has emunah is very happy. There's something wrong, he smiles, he sings, and he says it's all good because Hashem is good and Hashem will complete whatever is necessary. So this person with emunah is always happy. That's why the Arizal stressed so much the mitzvah of simcha. It's a very big mitzvah. The Arizal said to be simcha always. Why a very big mitzvah? Which is a mitzvah that is very big? When we find the word big, kol mitzvah secha emunah. Biggest mitzvah is the combination of all mitzvahs, which is emunah, and that is achieved by simcha. It goes hand in hand with simcha. And this second bettler said, because of the fact that I do not listen to the complaints of this world, therefore I live a very good life. Note the difference. The first bettler said I live a very long life. The second bettler said I live a very good life. A good life of satisfaction, of happiness, without anything lacking. And this good life of mine is that I eat bread and drink water. The Torah says, Hashem said, if you obey the mitzvahs of Hashem, if you obey these mitzvahs, if you loyal to Hashem, what is the blessing Hashem said? I'll give you gold, I'll give you diamonds, no, I'll give you a blessing, I'll bless your bread and your water. I'll give such a blessing into the bread and water that you have, that by eating this bread you will avoid every type of disease or sickness or depression of mind. The bread and water will be blessed. This is the good life of this bettler. He described as good life, he said, because he eats bread and water. Then he said, there is a country where there is a lot of wealth. And this wealth that they have, of course, treasures. These treasures, he meant to imply, were spiritual treasures. Treasures beruchnius. The very wealthy people, which means wealth beruchnius, very holy people, the tzadikim, once got together. Each one started to speak about, describe the good life of his, meaning the high degree of spiritual life, of purity, that he achieved. Because if you're going to speak about good life, you cannot speak about the good life of Gashmius. There is nothing good about Gashmius, unless it is coupled with, subservient to, Ruchnius. The body is good only when it serves the Neshama. If a person does a lot of workout, physical workout, and builds up body muscles, and these body muscles are used to commit sins with, that's not a good body. It's a very evil kind of a body, a very sick kind of a body that does not serve its purpose. A good body is one, no matter how weak it is physically, if that body is used to serve Kedusha, a body that is tormented and fasting and suffering, because of the sake of performing mitzvahs, that's the healthiest body that exists, the purest one. These treasures they spoke about, they live a good life. Each one described the good life that he lives, the ruchnis. Each one spoke about the description of his good life. And this second Bettler said, I spoke up, and I said to them, I live a chayim tevim, a good life that is better, superior, all the good lives you describe. And I have proof. Of course, I would not boast this without proving my point. I have proof that I challenge you. If you really live a life of such goodness, such purity, let's see if you can help. You can rescue. There's a certain land which is in a sad dilemma. Try to rescue them, save them from the problem, this dilemma they're suffering from. This land is one that has a garden. In this garden, there are special fruits that are so extraordinary. These fruits contain every type of taste that exists in the world. Also, every type of reach, of smell, every kind of odor, aroma, that means a pleasant aroma that exists also, and also every type of color, various types of rich colors, appearance, beauty, every type of beauty that exists is found in this garden. The garden has a caretaker, a special gardener who tends to this garden, who sees that the garden remains clean and pure and is productive in all its beauty, in all its greatness. The people in that land lived a good life through this garden, a life of perfection. First, what is meant by this garden? The Zohar Kodesh says that there is a special garden, the special garden, that's Gan Eden, in heaven, which it comes forth that which is perfect in both reach, smell, taste, and appearance, looks. Looks meaning different, various types of colors. These, of course, we won't go into detail, of course, this pertains to the different spheres. But it means all the various aspects of the ruchnis, the spiritual, come from Gan Eden. How? How does this benefit the world, the people in the world? Because this comes forth in a form of a light, special oil. It's the oil of Torah, the light of Torah which shines forth from this garden, Gan Eden, this Garden of Eden, and this light comes down to the world and nourishes spiritually the neshamas of every single person, every Jew. But how is this light directed? You have to move this light. You have a powerful spotlight. You want to shine it at something. It's got to be. There must be a director for it. This is guided by the tzadik emes. The tzadik is the one who holds this light, directs it at, and injects it into each person who's prepared to receive this, to absorb the sacred, the holy rays of this light. This is the tzadik emes, which the side, the connection between Gan Eden and the people, the neshamas of this world. He is the gardener because the neshamas are like plants that grow in this. All the neshamas come, grew, were planted in this Gan Eden. They were sent down to earth, and of course they must sustain their life through this light of Gan Eden, which keeps them alive. Given to them with the power of this gardener, the Baal HaSodah, which is the Tzadik Emes. This is what the second Bethlehem meant, telling you about the special place where the garden was, and they received the light of this garden, which was for them the Chayim Tevim, perfect life, through this garden. Now he related that one day this gardener was lost. Somehow they lost the gardener, which means, of course, that doesn't mean physically. It means that suddenly the light of the tzadik became hidden. Became Hanel. It was hidden from the world due to something which blocked or blotted out the light of the tzaddik. Naturally, a person wants to receive this light, he must have emunah. If one does not believe in the tzaddik emes, he cannot receive any good from the tzaddik emes. Or if a person listens to evil talk of one who was a misnagid, who was in opposition to tzaddikim, naturally this will block him from receiving nourishment, the yunika, from the tzaddik emes. So in this land, something happened which caused this gardener to become lost. And they were left without the gardener, which meant then that everything in the garden was now forced to become spoiled. The light was cut off, the growth in that garden was stopped, since there was no gardener to tend to it, and they could no longer receive the nourishment either of the fruits of that garden. Though there was still enough, the part of those plants, that the initial part that falls off from the plants and itself takes root by itself without being planted, is enough for that if one would want to seek to draw from that to find also the beauty of this garden, which of course means that one, even after the tzaddik emes is hidden, if one searches for his light truly, he could find it hidden there within his writings or from his hidden students. But the fact was that they did not, and they lost out. What caused this? A very evil, sadistic king came to this land. He found that he could not hurt them at all. He could not harm them, because there was no way he could do them harm. They lived a life of happiness and purity, a good life. So he decided there is one way he could overcome them, by destroying, by hurting the good life of this land that they derived from this garden. Now, it's not that he actually spoiled the garden, because he could not, this evil king, could not really do harm to the spiritual powers of the garden. The Sfidas of Kedusha cannot be harmed directly, but he could do harm in the connection, the tie between these Sfidas and the people, and this he did. Again, we go back to this in the story form, rather than the Kabbalah terms. This he did by leaving behind him 3 groups of his followers, his servants. He commanded these 3 groups, told them what they should do, and through this they would destroy the marvelous taste, the unequal taste that came from this garden. So that the result would be, if a person wanted to taste anything, of the usual taste they had till then, they would have only the taste of nevela. Nevela means a dead animal, an unkosher dead animal, not one that was slaughtered kosher. A tamei animal who dies by himself, and is called nevela. Everything would have the taste of nevela, chas v'sholom, instead of the usually good taste, the pleasant taste that existed before. And so too, he also spoiled this aroma, the combination of pleasant aromas that emanated from this garden, so that from that time on, whenever a person would smell anything, everything would have the smell of chelbana. Chelbana is that spice which has a very bad smell. There are 11 spices in the Ketedus. The Ketedus is the highest of all the sacrifices, placing the special 11 spices. It's used daily, and especially in Kippur. These 11 spices, 10 are the pure spices. There's also mixed in a spice of chelbana, which is one of very bad smell. And of course, we once explained, as the Gemara says, the reason for this is to tell us that Ketedus is the holiest korban, despite the fact that it has this chelbana, this bad-smelling spice in it. What does that teach us? That a minyan is the highest level of Kedusha. Because without a minyan, you can have 9 of the greatest tzaddikim in the world. The upper top-level tzaddikim in the entire world. 9 of them together. They cannot say Baruch Hu, they cannot say Kedusha, they cannot say Kaddish, they cannot read the Torah. If you have 10 people, even ordinary ones, they can say all these, the top of the Kedusha of Tefillah. All these different facets of Tefillah can be said by a million of 10. Now these 10, of course, a million are great. If you have a regular million of 10 people, 10 kosher Jews, and along comes one Jew who is bad. He's a Russia, he's evil, he wants to join this million. Is his tefillah accepted? Of course. Once he joins a million, no matter what he is, alone his tefillah will be worthless. It has a bad smell to it. Bad smell means it's filled with sins. These sins are a foul odor. But this person with his foul-odored sins, if he joins a million, his tefillah goes right up together with the rest of them. That's why the Torah says, if you want to bring this Keteris, the highest degree of Kedusha in a sacrifice, Hashem shows, I want Chelbana included, to teach you that even the worst Russia can join a group, a quorum, a million of 10, and his tefillah is accepted also. But if you have this Chelbana alone, that's an unbearable odor. And this is what the king did. The second group of slaves and servants destroyed or spoiled, contaminated the smell from that garden, and brought about a situation where everything they smelled had the smell of Chelbana. An unbearable odor. So too they destroyed or spoiled, they harmed the sight, the vision, the looks of things, the appearance, the colors, that everything became dark. Their eyes became darkened as though there were clouds. Their eyes became cloudy. Though there were clouds in front of them. This is what brought to the Shavu of Nacharagoshim. Clouds, tears, that cause a blinding of the eyes. These rain clouds are the tears that can do harm to the eyes. These clouds were what the slaves, the servants, brought about to darken the light of the eyes. They could not see anything of beauty anymore. All this was done by this evil king. This is the story told by the second Bettler. Now the second Bettler concluded and said, now, if you claim, this group of tzaddikim claim that you live a good life, let us see if you can help that land. Help them by curing their situation. They've lost the power of taste, smell, and sight. Your life is that good. See if you can contribute some of your good life to them. Return to them their former good life. But I tell you, he continued, this Bettler said to these tzaddikim, that if you cannot help them, if you're powerful enough to help them, good. You cannot help them, then you'll find that they will spoil your good life in turn. Either you help them, or else if you're powerless to help them, then your good life will become spoiled too, as theirs was. Now the Gemara says, this we could understand, the words of the Gemara, that there is a Russia, an evil person sometimes, who is so powerful that somehow there is no obstacle in his path. All his opposition falls away before him. One of those lines, you have certain times to show him whether it's an evil country, whether it's an evil group, an evil individual who is successful. They're successful in their evil, they do harm, and it seems there's no stopping them. It's an avalanche which cannot be stopped. And in the path of this avalanche, there are many victims. Even tzaddikim, too, this Russia can swallow up, destroy even tzaddikim. So great is his fortune, so powerful is his evil. The Gemara says, the Torah says that even a tzaddik he can swallow up. This means a tzaddik who is not perfect. He is a tzaddik, but not a perfect tzaddik. Tzaddik she'eini gomor. He does not have the power to swallow up, destroy a tzadik gomer, a complete, perfect tzaddikim, that is not the power. This is what this second Bettler said to them. If you can help them, that means if you are a tzadik gomer, you'll be able to help them, because the harm done there will not affect you. But if you're not a tzadik gomer, you're going to combat this evil, you're taking a big risk, because you too can be engulfed by this flood of evil, and you'll have your Chaim Tevim destroyed also. And so these wealthy people of that land went along with this second Bettler. The wealthy people means the tzaddikim went along with him towards that land. And on the way, each one lived this good life, which means they studied Torah, they davened, they did their mitzvahs, they had all these treasures with them. When they came, they did this because they wanted to strengthen themselves, to purify themselves. As much as they did, they came close to that land, just close to it, not entering it, they began to feel that everything was becoming spoiled. The taste was becoming spoiled. The other items, the smell, the vision, each one felt that it was becoming spoiled. So the Bettler said to them, if now that you have not even entered yet into this land, you already feel the spoilage, you already feel the damage that you're suffering, imagine then, how could you expect to go in there? How do you expect to enter into the land itself? If even from a distance it affects you. Therefore, meanwhile, he said, I will help you. You have been affected now. He took some of the bread and water, gave it to them. They began to feel in this bread and water all the taste and smell and beauty that existed. And that which was spoiled was now perfected. But they waited there. They could not enter into that land. Meanwhile, at this same time, simultaneously, the people in the land, where this garden was, that was close to them now, began to study their situation. Began to realize that something went wrong. The liberals had taken over the land, had spoiled everything that was good, had destroyed a land where there was perfect law and order and peace, contentment, happiness. And now everything had, the taste was gone. People could feel no taste in education, in work. There was complete destruction, devastation. We had to realize that something had gone wrong someplace. Now, what is the solution? How do they go about correcting something? Is this a cancerous situation where there's no possibility of curing it? Is this land already destroyed? Or is there some means of correcting all the damage that was done? They decided, at least they thought about it. When they thought, they had a desire for correcting it, and the thought came to them. They decided that the solution could be found, most probably, there is a land of very wealthy people, and by going to that land, then perhaps we can find a solution to our problem. So they said, let's go to these tzaddikim, let's tell them about the fact that our gardener is lost, because we know that our gardener actually stemmed from, his origin was from that land of those wealthy people. He came from there. And surely, if so, those people could help us. This they did. They sent messengers from that land to the land of these wealthy people, which means to this place of these tzaddikim. And as the messengers came out of that land, they started their journey. They met these wealthy people right there, who were coming to meet them. There was a shortcut, and these tzaddikim asked the messengers where they were going. They replied, we're going to the land of these wealthy people to help us. So they said, we ourselves are from that land. We are those wealthy people. We're those tzaddikim you're seeking. And in fact, we're going to you to help you. So the deaf Bettler spoke up and said to them, to these messengers, you need me. I'm the one that you need to help you. Because these other tzaddikim cannot do any good for you. They're not powerful enough. Therefore, I suggest that the tzaddikim remain here. I will go alone, enter into this land, and see what is necessary to correct the situation. Continue the story to this Chassid and Caroline said, and so I went with these messengers. I went into their land, and I began to study what was going on. I went from one city to the next, and there I saw, and I observed very closely, and I saw that there were a group of people who were speaking, and in speaking they made some kind of a joke. Then afterwards another group made another kind of a joke. And people gathered around to listen and made more jokes. They were smiling and laughing, and seemed to be very amusing. People are enjoying themselves. This I could see from far. But I came closer, I listened more closely to what they were saying, and I found that this enjoyment was, the jokes they were speaking were colored jokes, profanity. In Hebrew it's called nivel peh, unclean language. These jokes were all nivel peh, contaminated words. This one was saying one kind of nivel peh in a very light sense, where the word was a double entendre, two meanings to it, could be taken two ways. The second one said still more delicately, they laugh about this, they have more pleasure, they go still further, the third is more daring. So I went from further on to a different city. I had seen one thing now. I went further and I found another case. I'd see two people who were arguing very vehemently about a certain business matter, partnership or business transaction, and they couldn't get together on this, so they decided to go to a court. The court should rule, decide their case. They came to a court, and the court heard both sides. The judges ruled that this one is right, and this one is guilty, he's wrong. They walked out of that court, and they began to discuss the court's ruling. They began to argue about this again. They said they don't like the decision of the court. Neither one liked it. Even the person who said he was right felt they did not give him all the right that he deserved. The second one said, I'm not wrong. They decided to go to a second court. They selected a second court in a different place, and they came before that court. They received a decision. Again, they argued about this decision. They went to a third court, and so they continued on, selecting different courts, one after the other, until the whole city was filled with courts, judges. And the question is why? Why should there be so many trials, such a repetition in trials? I looked closer, I observed, and I found the fact was there was no truth there. There was no honesty. That this one would listen more closely, would favor one party, the second would favor a second party. This was due to the fact that they would take bribes. Taking bribes, naturally, they would bend the truth. So there was no truth. The entire court system was fraudulent. They favored one type of minority, regardless of what the true judgment was, because of bribes, because of political considerations, and so there was no justice whatsoever in that land. Then I went further, and I saw that the city had become filled with pornography, with evil, with zanut. And it was so prevalent that it became as though it was permissible, which means there was a degree of permissiveness. Note how Arizal's story reaches a point in history where you see, you live through a period like this, this evil, bitter period. All this comes to life. And it reached the point where there was no stopping this. Everyone joined in. Everywhere there were places that sprang up, places, illegal places, that drew people to this, became victim to this evil habit. And I said to these messengers, after studying this, I said to them, this Bettler said, the reason that this happened is because they became spoiled. The taste, the smell, and the good looks, the appearance, that came from this garden. How? This evil king had left over 3 groups of servants. They should go out into the land and they should spoil these 3 items. First, by speaking nivul peh, that's profanity, unclean language. And by speaking nivul peh, the word nivul is the word nevela. This would spoil the taste. The person who speaks such kind of talk loses all sense of good taste. And therefore, everything became to them like nevela. If you want to get the good taste back, you get to remove this kind of talk, this evil talk. Secondly, the fact that they introduced bribery into the courts, the Torah tells us that bribery causes blindness. Bribery, graft, blinds the eyes of the wise, which means the judges. Judges who could see the truth, their eyes become blinded by this money that's given to them as graft. This is what spoiled the power of vision. Third, they introduced this pornography, this permissiveness into the land. With this, the power of smell became destroyed, became very sadly damaged. Because Tikkun HaBris, the symbol for Tikkun HaBris is the Reach, the pleasant, pure aroma. The power of Reach, the summum, spices, is the power of Kedusha of Tikkun HaBris. When there is Chas v'Shalom Chilul HaBris, Sinus, then there is the bad, foul smell. This Rabbi Arizal tells us, the second Torah, speaking about the tzadik, Yosef HaTzadik, who was a symbol of Tikkun HaBris. What was he called? He was called Ben Peiras Yosef, one of beauty. Beauty, what has that got to do with smell? Ben Arizal says that the Tikkun HaBris is the Reach Tov, a good smell, because the Zohar Kodesh says that the tzadik emes, the tzadik, derives his power from the nostrils. You look for the padashka. The nostrils means the power of smell, just as what is the power of a tzadik? The neshama, spiritual power. Neshama, the word neshama means breath or smell. And that's why we say kol neshama tehalakah, every neshama, soul should bless Hashem. We refer to the power of smell, the bracha on the reach, the smelling the summer. So this word padashka is begimatria peiras. Bein peiras Yosef, begimatria the nostrils, showing that the tzadik emes, Tikkun HaBris, is the power of reich, of smell. Therefore, the Bettler said to these messengers, if you want to correct these things, go out into the land and get these guilty parties, the servants, the evil servants of this cruel king, and expel them from the kingdom. You'll find that these 3 sins will become corrected, and a good taste and vision, reach, will return. Not only that, but you'll suddenly find that the gardener will reappear. The lost gardener will reappear. This they did. They began to correct the land of these 3 sins. They began to search for these evil servants. They would catch someone, they would arrest and search, which of course is illegal according to an illegal Supreme Court. Halt and search is illegal, but that's because it's illegal, therefore you have all crimes committed. Here they did this, they broke this illegal procedure, and by doing this they captured all the evil servants of the king, they expelled them, and in this way they found that the good was returning. Then, when these were out, and the damage was being repaired, suddenly there was a loud tumult in the city. And people began to cry out and yell, and they all came to the same realization. All this time, there was one person in the city that was being mocked, jeered at. They would call him the Meshuggah, an insane person, a madman. And they said, no, they began to realize perhaps this person they call a madman, Chas v'shalom, is that lost gardener, but they didn't realize it. So they took him and called him back, and they found that this one that they had been throwing rocks at, making fun of him, which means they got to a point where the tzadik emes, somebody was snagged going against him. Worst type of rumors, bad words said against the tzadik emes. This is found in every generation. Each tzadik emes, each generation has groups of enemies, misnagdim, who talk against him. Time of Baal Shem Tov, Baal Shem HaKadosh, even the great people then strive to put the Baal Shem HaKadosh in chedim. The brothers of Yosef HaTzadik wanted to kill him or sell him. Time of Rabbeinu Zal, there were so few who realized Rabbeinu Zal's greatness. Even the great leaders were enemies of Rabbeinu Zal. This was the light, the great light that was hidden, the Erenelam. Now they said, this person whom we all fought against, let's stop and think, this could be the gardener. So they brought this person before them, and they studied him, and they said, true. Now we realize, now that our sense of smell and vision and taste has been perfected again, we can now see this is truly the gardener, this is truly the tzaddik emes. With this, everything was corrected. So the Bettler concluded now the story to the Chassid Kala and said, as a result, we see that I have the consent, the confirmation of that land of wealth, which means all those tzaddikim who were there, they will confirm the fact that I live truly a life of purity and goodness. Yes, I am the one that perfected that land where the gardener was lost. I brought back the knowledge of the tzaddik emes to that country. Therefore now, he said, I hereby give to you, as a gift, this good life of mine. Before this, I gave you only a blessing. You should get it. Now I give it to you as a gift. And this resulted in a great, powerful rejoicing. They rejoiced that entire day with this Bettler. Of course, in the future we'll find that every one of the Bettlers did the same. They came back, they returned for that day, each one in his turn, and gave as a complete gift that which he had first blessed this young couple with. First one gave them as a gift the long life, second one gave them as a gift the good life, life of perfection and purity. This was the second day. And note that each one comes on his respective day, which means, of course, it is understood that these are the tzaddikim referring to the Sfidas. First one was the Sfidas HaChesed, the second is Sfidas Gevura, power, Din. The good is in Din, the way Hashem wanted to create the world. All that is good. In fact, when we say Tov, Tov is Chesed, good. Tov Mi'od, very good, that means real Chayim Tov Mi'od, that's Din, Gures. This was the second Bettler. Then it goes on now to the third day. Each respective day, a different Bettler showed up, which means the tzaddik emes showed up in a different form, to give them the brachos contained in him from all these seven spheres. The third day, the day began, and when that day began, the couple began to think again. And they reminded themselves about the time they were in the forest, and how the third Bettler came, the one that stammered, they could not speak clearly. And they began to yearn for this Bettler, began to cry, plead, begged, to daven, how can we get this third bettler here? Now, while they were davening, while they were crying, shedding tears about this, they reached a high point of emotion. Suddenly he came, and he said, I am here. It was their will, a powerful desire that brought him. A person wants Kedusha strongly enough, he can get it. In fact, the Kedusha will come to him. So it was through their yearning and their tears that this tzaddik came to them. And not only that, but he showed them such a true ahava. The tzaddik emes took them, hugged them, and kissed them, and said to them, I gave you a bracha first to be like me. Now I give you a gift also. You think that I am one who stammers, I cannot speak. The fact is, not so. We'll take the story of the third bettler the next time and describe his case in a very unusual. We continue the shir in Sichos Haran, Arizal, Sichos Haran, Sif Kuf Mentes, paragraph 149, which deals with the story of the Polymacius. In fact, we are on the story of Polymacius, the 13th final story of the Zion Bettlers, the 7 beggars, the 7 tzaddikim. We're on the story of the third day. 7 days. During the 7 days of the feast, the wedding of the young couple, to whom these 7 bettlers appeared. The story, the synopsis of the story until now, a brief synopsis of the story as begun. 2 beggars, 2 children who were lost in the forest and who were saved by a succession of 7 beggars who gave them food. These 7 beggars all seemingly had physical defects. The children appreciated this. These 7 beggars gave them a bracha, a blessing, that the children should be like them, should have these same physical defects. Then, years later, a match was arranged between these 2 children. And at the wedding, after 7 days of feast, the children displayed a very strong yearning, craving to be able to be zecher, privileged to see these 7 bettlers again. Each day of the 7 days of the feast, one of these 7 bettlers appeared. The first day, the blind bettler appeared, gave them the bracha, materialized the bracha by giving them as a gift his power. His power was living a very long life, a truly long life. The second bettler, the deaf one, appeared on the second day and gave them his power of living a very good life. We now come to the story of the third bettler. On the third day, as mentioned, the young couple cried with a strong yearning and desire to see the third bettler. Because of the fact that they craved it so much, they cried so hard. They were zecher to this kedusha of seeing this great tzaddik. Again, we mentioned the fact that the 7 tzaddikim actually were the compilation of the 7 sfidas. All 7 combined into one tzaddik emes. And each sfida, each midah, each characteristic, he showed each time. He came in a different form each time. The third day, the midah of Tiferes. So this third bettler appeared suddenly. And he said to them, this third bettler's defect was that he had difficulty in speech. And so it seemed. He stammered, he could not speak coherently. He came, he told them, I am here. and he fell upon them, and kissed them, and hugged them. He showed a close, deep ahava, which is the true character of a tzadik emes. Tzadik emes never shows a haughtiness, chas v'sholom, or a remoteness. Those who want to come close to the tzadik are taken close by himself, the greatest humbleness. He said to them, first, when I met you when you were children, I gave you a bracha, you should be like me. Now I give you this as an outright gift, that you should be just as I am. What is meant just as I am? You have difficulty in speech. He said, but you think. It seems that I have difficulty in speech. Truth is, I have no difficulty at all, whatsoever. My speech is more clear, more coherent, more pure than any other person out in existence. It is only, why does it appear that I have difficulty in speech? Because I consider the speech, the words that are spoken in the world, those that have no bearing on Kedusha, those words that are not direct praise to Hashem, they are not complete. They're only half words. And therefore, it seems that I have difficulty in speech because I ignore those kind of words. I refuse to take any part in words that are not direct praise to Hashem. Therefore, it seems that I lack completeness, perfection in speech. Truth is, I have no difficulty with speech whatsoever. To the contrary, I am a marvelous speaker. In fact, I know how to eloquently give forth with the most beautiful songs, nigunim, and unusual type of combination of words, to the point, to the extent, where there is no person on earth who would not have the strongest desire to hear me, to listen to me. And I know, too, that through these special songs, combinations of words and songs, there are contained in them every type of wisdom in the world, which means that I possess every kind of wisdom that exists. Again, of course, this was not chas v'sholom said with pride or with conceit. This was said as a simple matter-of-fact statement. And he continued, I have the confirmation about this fact from that certain person, that certain very great person who was known as the true ish chesed, true person, tzadik of great kindness. It's a very famous ish chesed, or the ish chesed, the tzadik of chesed, of kindness, of goodness. That great ish chesed, that true ish chesed, he will testify to the fact that I have this unusual ability. There's an entire story behind this, he said. He continued on telling the story. One time, he told there was a group of wise men, very wise men, sitting and discussing the topic of wisdom. Each one boasted about his chachma, his wisdom. First one boasted that he had the power to bring forth, to produce. Through his chachma, he could produce iron from the ground, from the earth. From the earth itself, he could produce iron, which of course is unusual. How do you convert it? But this was his special talent. Wisdom, he knew how to do this. Second one boasted he could produce a different type of metal. Another one said, I can go much further than that. I can produce actual silver. That's very precious. It's much more precious than what you can produce. Produce this from the earth. Next one said, I can produce gold. That's still more precious than silver. Each one showing a superiority in wisdom. Next one stated, I can produce the weapons of war, which are very beneficial, very destructive, of course, but beneficial to a country who is at war. This is destroying sometimes is constructive. You destroy an enemy who's attacking, you aid yourself, the defense of yourself. Next one said that he could produce these same metals that you speak about. He said, I can produce these metals not from the earth, but from other things. Actually convert one type of item to a different one. This takes much greater, deeper wisdom. This continued on, each one boasting about what he can do, how he can use his wisdom, because there are a lot of things that are discovered or invented through wisdom. Gunpowder, for example, Arizal brings an example. Other things that too require wisdom, require scientific knowledge and wisdom. Each one made these statements about his great chachma. Finally, one of them spoke up and said, I am wiser than all of you. Everything you boasted you can accomplish is nothing compared to my wisdom, the extent of my wisdom. Because I am as wise as the day. All the wise men who sat there, as wise as they were, could not understand what he meant. And he said, I'm as wise as the day. And he said to them, I'll explain. All the wisdom that you speak about, every one of this type of accomplishment, wisdom, if you gather all those together, put them all together, they're equals to a certain element of time. So that all of yours combined may be only one single hour of time, equal to 1 hour of time. Even though each wisdom itself is taken from a different origin, a different time origin. For example, when Hashem created the world, on each one of the 6 days of creation, there was created this certain type of wisdom or a certain type of element on that day. The wisdom required is to select these different elements, combine them, and make it into a compound. You take something from a certain time of day, one of the days, one of those elements, combine it with the element created on a different day. You take a few of those, combine them, you have the compound which will produce iron, for example, or a different type of invention, different type of knowledge. But all these chachmas, these wisdom, are taken from the day in which there was this creation, in which there was this combination. So that if we take all the wisdom you speak about, this last wise man said, they could amount to only one single hour, a total of 1 hour taken from all of creation, the time of the 6 days. But I, he said, I am as wise as a complete day. This was all the statement of the last chacham. This is still a story being told by this Bettler who stammered. Now the Bettler said, he added, I was there, true. And I spoke up, and I said to this last wise man, I asked him, as which day? You claim that you are wise as a complete day. My question is, you are as wise as which day? This last chacham paused in shock and surprised. He said to all the wise men, this Bettler, this stammerer, is wiser than I am. Because he asked me, as which day, I am as wise as which day. That question proves he's wiser than I am. However, my answer to his question is, I am as wise as any day that you wish. Now, this last chacham said, the one who answered the stammerer's question, the Bettler's question. Now, of course, you may all ask, if my answer is as wise as any day, how come that this Bettler is still wiser than I am? Why doesn't this prove that I am wiser than him, since my reply is I'm as wise as any day he wishes? The answer is, there is a story behind this. He said, I will tell you the story. There is a ish chesed ha'emes. There is a tzadik, usually great holy tzadik, who's called a true ish chesed, true person, individual of kindness, extreme kindness. The word chesed, of course, is generally applied to the mitzvah of tzedakah, charity, mitzvah of ma'asim tevim, good deeds, mitzvah of gmilas chasodim. Gmilas chasodim means those good deeds that are done, not necessarily in the sense of charity. A person can do a good deed to the wealthiest man on earth. If he's ever in trouble and needs advice to extricate himself, to save himself, be rescued from a dilemma, this kind of advice alone is worth more than charity and is given to a wealthy person. That's why the Gemara says Gmilas Chasodim is greater than tzedakah, because it could be done to a person who's wealthy also, not just to the poor. Gmilas Chesed can be done to a person who no longer is alive. Going to one's funeral is a Gmilas Chesed. Tzedakah is done only to those who are alive and poor. Tzedakah generally means money alone. Gmilas Chesed could be any kind of good deed, and therefore this is higher than tzedakah. So the word chesed would apply to Gmilas Chasodim, or tzedakah, or any good deed, ma'asim tevim. There is a tzadik emes, who is called a ish chesed shel ha'emes, the true ish chesed, the one who assembles, the one who compiles, the one who accumulates all the good deeds that are done. They're all under his care. Now, this kvad peh, this bettler, we speak now about the bettler. We know that the word the bettler in this case is speaking only about the bettler who was a kvad peh, who stammered, who seemed to have difficulty in speech, but whose speech, as we said, was perfect. This bettler, he said, is the one that goes around and gathers of the chesed, the chasodim, the true chasodim that are done throughout the world, and he brings these chasodim to this true ish chesed, this tzadik emes, who is called a true ish chesed. Through this fact that these chasodim are brought to this tzadik, through this fact there are created the days, the hours, the time. Time itself is created. The fact that these chasodim are brought to this true tzaddik, this tzaddik shel chesed, ish chesed emes, the tzaddik of chesed, through this the days and time is created. Now, agav, we learn from here, if so, since this is fact, that time itself is created, each person is dictated to by time. Each person lives according to time. Each person gets up in the morning, he has a day, he looks forward to living that day. It therefore is up to the person to create his own day. Since time is created by the good deeds, the chasodim, therefore each person can actually create his own life, create the day that is about to come forth. Now the question, of course, is, didn't Hashem create the world? Didn't Hashem create time? The answer is Hashem created the 6 days, the 7th day, the Shabbos, and then la'asais, Asher bora elikim la'asais. All this is created by Hashem la'asais, to continue creating. There must be a recreation every single day, every week, as time goes on. The world was created up to that moment. There must be a new creation as time goes on. In this new creation, we have the partnership between humans and Hashem in creating this time. As the Gemara says, for example, a person who says Vayechulu on Friday night, that means that he states his implicit faith in Hashem, complete, pure faith that Hashem created a world originally from nothing. There was no creation before this world. There was nothing in existence before this world except Hashem himself. There were no prehistoric ages or eras. This world prior to 5,738 years ago did not exist. There was nothing in existence, no dinosaurs of any kind, none of the elements that exist. There was absolutely nothing except Hashem himself. That person who makes that statement on Friday night with true faith, that person becomes a partner with Hashem for the creation of the new week, the new creation after Shabbos. So we see there too many ways in which a person can actually create time, create the world, or at least to sustain the world, keep it going. Here we see the fact that by doing mitzvahs, chasadim, this is what creates time. Time must be constantly created, and now we come to the general statement that this bettler is the one who assembles or gathers up all the good deeds, all the chasadim shalemis. He brings it to this tzadik emes of chesed, and with this, the day is created. Now, to continue, he said, to elaborate more on this, there exists a mountain, a special mountain. On top of that mountain stands a large rock. And from that rock there comes forth a stream of water. That's on the mountain, the rock from which comes forth a stream of water. Secondly, every item that has life contains a heart. The heart is the center, the core of life. Every living thing, whether it is human, animal life, bird life, fish life, every item has a heart. And that heart is the center, the very center of this organism that keeps it alive. Now, the fact is that the entire world, the whole world itself, is an organism too. The world itself is a complete organism with a face, with hands, legs, different parts of the body. And this whole world has a heart too. There is such thing as the heart of the world. But this heart of the world has such deep, heartfelt emotion to it, in it, contains so much emotion, which means that there is a person who is soft-hearted, there's a person who is hard-hearted. There's a lev ha'evan, like a heart of stone, a person who has no feelings. There's one who has deep feelings, very deep, very considerate, very emotional, one who feels in his heart a compassion for everything that needs help. So the world itself, it's the heart of the world, is so deep in emotion, so soft in this respect, that there is more heart to it, more feeling to it, to the tip of this heart. To the heart itself, of course, too, has a whole form. The heart itself of the world is in the shape of an organism too, as we said, with a face, hands, feet, and so on. And the nail on the foot of this heart, the part of the heart which is considered to comparable to the nail of the foot, which means the least feeling item that exists, but since it is part of this heart of the world, has more feeling and more depth than any other heart that exists. This is the softness and feeling of this special heart, the heart of the world. Now, combine these two, on the mountain, this stone, the well, stands at one point, extreme side of the world. The heart of the world stands at the other end of the world. They are an entire world apart. This heart stands facing this well and stands there with a powerful yearning, a desire to get to reach this well. The heart has a strong yearning desire to reach this well. The well itself is a symbol. What is this well that flows from this rock on this mountain? This is the symbol of the origin of all the good, a well. Then it also, this is the good, the kudus tevas, the good points that are contained in each person. Everybody. Arizal brings that everybody in the world has a nekuda teva. A nekuda teva, a good point, a good characteristic, a good quality that others do not have. You can have an ordinary, simple person who might have a good quality that is so pure, in his respect, better than a great tzadik. A great tzadik is one who is good in everything, but he might not excel extremely in one certain point. There could be one person who, in that one respect, excels. There might be a person, let's say, who will go out of his way to help others. Go out in the middle of the night to see if he can find somebody, some wayfarer, some wanderer, somebody who's hurt. A big tzaddik might not go that far, to that extent. Or there could be a person who says Tillim throughout the entire night, or all day long. Big tzaddik might not spend all that time on it. Each person does possess a certain good quality that others do not have. Therefore, the Arizal says each person should become close, become friendly with, join together with others so that they can share their good nekudas. Each one should learn from the other his good nekudas. There is, however, an origin, a shadish for all these good nekudas, and that is that shadish, that origin is this well, represented by this well in the story. So that the heart of the world, which means actually the heart of each person in the world, yearns truly, heart is speaking about the heart of the soul in that person, yearns for that well from which she can derive these good nekudas, these good points. So now, continuing on is saying that the yearning of this heart is so great that it cries out to reach this well. The well, too, has a strong desire for the heart of the world. However, this heart has two items from which it suffers. Two items that weaken it, make it very weak. One is the fact that the sun continually pursues, harasses this heart, and the burning rays of the sun seek to destroy the heart. So that the heart suffers, because the heart is constantly exposed to the sun, the rays of the sun, and this is one of the items that make the heart suffer and weaken the heart very much. The second item that weakens the heart is the fact that the strong craving desire takes a lot of energy and strength from the heart itself. The constant yearning, where the part of its own self is given out, emanates through this yearning and crying for this well. In fact, it stands before the well with a strong cry and desire. These are the two things that weaken the heart. And when the heart must at times rest a little to sustain itself, get back some strength, then there comes a large bird, spreads its wings over this heart, protects it from the sun, and then during that short period of time, the heart has a rest, a slight rest, and it rejuvenates its powers. So through that period of rest, it regains enough energy to continue on. But even then, even at this time of rest, it still looks with a strong yearning towards this well. What is meant by these 2 points that weaken the heart? Arizal brings Arizal's words that the sun that beats down upon the heart, the sun stands for the fire of the Yitzhahara, the Satan. The Yitzhahara, the evil desires that seek to destroy a person's heart, seek to destroy a person. Evil taivus that the Satan injects into a person's heart. This seeks to destroy the heart because the power of will, of life in the heart, is then turned towards, geared to that which is usur, evil. And this, of course, could destroy the person, chas v'shalom. So this is when the heart is turned to evil. There's a second case that's dangerous for the heart too, and that is sometimes the ribui oil, too much light, too much goodness. A person who is suddenly filled with a strong desire to serve Hashem. So he makes everything void, hefker. He drops his job, drops his work, drops his family. He goes on to 22 hours of the day in tefillah, in Torah, in constant fasting. He overdoes what he should do. Overdoing it is very dangerous too. He could destroy himself, either physically or he could snap. By overdoing it, he could suddenly find he loses interest. There was too much of an effort put into it, and this broke through strain. This broke his spirit, and he drops completely, chas v'shalom. A person going too far at one time could actually lose out much more. It's like a person who goes towards a light, and too much light, instead of giving him the ability to see, can actually blind him. A person must go bihadroga, with a restraint, slowly, gradually, to rise up in stature, darga. So these are the two things that seek to destroy the heart. But at times, this bird, this large bird, spreads its wings. The Zayde Kodesh says this means the kanfei horeya, the wings of the lung that give the air, cool air, to the heart that could burn feverishly, the wings of the lung that beat upon fan the heart, and cool off the feverish heat of the heart. These wings of the bird refer to the knafayim, bal knafayim yagid davar, refer to the power of speech, power of Torah and tefillah. Person through tefillah, through his bediness, speaking to Hashem, you spell to Hashem, Hashem, guide me, help me. Help me how? Guide me to know exactly what to do, how to serve you. I shouldn't go too far, and I shouldn't do too little, because both are harmful. So this brings the person back in line. It takes him away from the Yetzer Hara, but also stops his too quick ascent, which could prove his downfall, chas v'shalom. This is what is meant by the wings of the bird that protect the heart. Also, the spoken words of tefillah and Torah. The study of Torah, the Gemara says, the words of the Torah are ke'ish, like fire. Hashem says, my words of Torah are like fire. And the study of these words of Torah, fire, will in turn combat a fire of desire, of passion injected to a person by the Yetzer Hara. Yitzra Bisha, Yitzra is Begematria Ish. Fire of evil desire, of temptation, can be overcome, defeated through the fiery words of Torah. This is what's meant by the desire of the heart to come to this well, and the fact that the heart suffers. Two reasons. At times there is neicha, there is rest for the heart, because of the bird which protects it, which means the words of Torah and Tefillah. Now we continue on the story and said, however, since there is such a strong yearning for the heart to reach the well to get to the heart, why doesn't the heart continue on? Why doesn't it go to the well and let these two unite? The answer is that the heart could not exist if for a moment it stops seeing this well. It must see the well constantly. The nature is that if something's on top of a mountain, when you stand at a distance, you could see that item. If you stand too close to the mountain, the item is covered from sight. So as the heart begins to approach the mountain, then he loses sight of the well. Therefore, he must stand at a distance. There's no alternative. There's no solution to that. He stands at that distance with this strong yearning and desire to get to the well. Now, there is a major problem. The problem is that this well has no time. There's no time at all for this well. It has no time of its own. And in order to exist in this world, everything requires time. You cannot exist here without time, because the whole world is based upon the concept of time. Time, of course, in essence, is something material. Spiritually, there is no time. In heaven, there is no such thing as time. Heaven is above. It's called Malam and Azman, above the concept of time. And that is why, as a person, when he dies, comes to heaven, he does not age. He can go through his whole process, trial in court, reliving his entire 70 years of life in a span of less than 1 second, yet he has actually gone through this entire 70 years. Arizal says the wiser a person is, the more he understands that time is nothing. Until you get to the point of the Malam and Azman completely, above the concept of time, where time plays no role at all. So time is relative. But it's only in this physical world where time plays any role. But, despite that, it is impossible to be part of this world unless you are part of time. This well has no time of its own, because this well is spiritual. How could this well exist in this world? The time that this well needs is given to it by this heart. A heart gives this well a gift of 1 day. Each day the heart gives the well a gift of 1 day, and that is how the well exists for another day. At the end of that day, there's no time left for the well. The well is about to cease to exist. It would leave this world, and if the well would leave, the heart cannot live without that well. The yearning for that well is so strong that if the well would disappear, the heart too would pass away. So when it gets close to the end of the day, as the day draws to a close, they begin to speak to each other, the heart and the well, begin to bid farewell to each other through special songs of deep feeling, deep emotional songs, a strong ahava and yearning, and a very tragic sense, sad sense of bidding farewell. Because once the well would leave, the well would be gone. With the well gone, the heart could not continue to live, so the heart too would become nostalgic, would pass away. Therefore, the sadness. Now, this Ish Chesed Emes, this great tzadik of Chesed, is the one that supervises this. He watches over this, and when the day draws to a close, this Ish Chesed, this great tzadik of Chesed, then brings time. We recall we said before that time is created through these good deeds of Chesed. This Ish Chesed who has all these, he's the master of all these good deeds, through which time is created, has a new day created through these good deeds. He brings this day to the heart. The heart then gives this day to the well. There is another day for the well to exist. And it's, again, this whole relationship between the heart and the well for another day. When the tzaddik brings this day to the heart, to give it to him, he brings it with all of the beauty of songs and the gunim, the beautiful wordings, prose, poetry, all these kinds of combinations of special words, tunes, with which the time is created. Because there are different types of tunes, different types of poetry, different types of days, create different kinds of days. There is a Sunday created, there is a Monday, there is a special day, a holiday, a Chassidus, holidays. So that each different day that is created comes with its different forms of tunes. All this time is brought by, compiled by this Ish Chesed. Of course, this means then, in essence, simply that the Ish Chesed is the one that gathers this time, gives it to the heart, in turn to the world. This keeps the world alive. The world cannot exist without the heart of the world. Now, the Bettler we're speaking about, since he is the one that knows all these tunes, he is the one that gives this time, or these chasadim, to the Ish Chesed. The Bettler is the one that goes around collecting these chasadim, bringing it to the Ish Chesed, through which time is created. Therefore, finally, this last Chacham who said, I am as wise as the day, said this Bettler is wiser than I am, because I am as wise as any day that's true. But whatever day I'm as wise at, that was created by this Bettler, who is the one that gathers the chasadim which create that day. Now, the lesson, the Moshe Feinstein says, is a very important lesson here for us to understand. We say that the day is about to end, the heart is about to pass away, the well is about to depart, there must be creation of a new day. We're speaking about the end of a day, which is why we find that the time between Mincha and Maariv, the end of a day, is most important. According to the Arizal, it's a time of great din, great judgment. It's a moment of judgment, a time when there has to be created anew the next day. And that's why a person should strive so hard then to daven with kavanah, this time of din. That's why we find, for example, at the holiest time on Shabbos, Shabbos Kodesh, which is the holiest day, in itself, the most sacred moment of Shabbos is towards the end of the Shabbos, which is called the Raiva Deraiva, Rotzen Shabbat, the time when, towards the end, when Moshe Rabbeinu, Yosef HaTzadik, David HaMelech were all nostalgic. All three, Moshe, Yosef, David, the Gematria Tefillah. Time when you have this tefillah, these shilas, tishbochos, what are these special songs and poetry? That's the tefillahs. These tefillahs that themselves come with time. They create the time. And that's why at that time, it is the most sacred moment, the most awesome moment of the Shabbos Kodesh itself. The person who has kavanah then, with his tefillah, is doing his part towards creating the new day. Imagine then, imagine then how important it is when we speak about the end of the year, last day of the year, Erev Rosh Hashanah. You can understand why the Menachem says that Rosh Hashanah little is the most important moment, because that is the end of the year, the creation of a new year. As we said here, there are different days of value. There's a regular weekday, there's a Chassidus, there are holidays. Imagine then the creation of the new year. When a day comes to an end, a new day is created. When the last day of the year comes to an end, Erev Rosh Hashanah, there is the creation now of a new day, which means the new year. So how a person should be mechaven then, Erev Rosh Hashanah, that last tefillah of the year, the last mincha, the Menachem said, those who understand, my madrega, my Erev Rosh Hashanah is greater than the Hashanah of great tzaddikim. And this is the duty, the ability of every single person, the chiyuv, the responsibility of each person to know that it's up to him, through his tefillos, his Torah, to be able to create the period of time that ensues after this day. And that's why, too, we stress the mincha of Friday, Erev Shabbos Kodesh. Daven mincha on Friday, not then with a minyan, daven it on time. We show Kabbalah Shabbos, we bring the Shabbos in earlier, through the power of this mincha of Erev Shabbos Kodesh. Because this is the creating of the new week, the end of the week, the Shabbos Kodesh, the end of the Chel going into Kedusha. There is this connection. That's called the Teshuva Michael HaKodesh. This is what the Ish Chesed Shel Emes does. He takes these chasodim, which are the creators of time, which create a new day. He takes this day created by these chasodim, gives them to the heart in turn gives it to the well, and that way the world can exist for another day. Of course, this means keeping the world going. The world cannot exist without Torah and Tefillah, which create time. Now, this Bettler, this Kavad Peh, is the one that goes around, collects these chasodim, which means that these chasodim, good deeds that create time, that's Torah, Tefillah, Meisim Tevim, have no bearing whatsoever upon, have no relationship with any words that are spoken that are not Kedusha. Therefore, since the normal words of the world are words that are not holy, that are Dvarim B'Telem, worthless words, that's why it seems that he stammers. He cannot speak because he has no connection with those words at all. The truth, though, he knows the most beautiful songs and poetry, because all of the Chassidim come with these songs and nigunim, of which he is the master of all. Now he said to this couple, before when I met you, I said to you, I bless you to be as I am. I now give you this power as a complete gift. You should be just as I am. And so this brought about a tremendous celebration, very deep, happy feeling between this couple and among all those assembled, and there was a great rejoicing. This was the story of the third Betel. We come to the story of the fourth Betel on the fourth day, which we'll take up the next time. Again, to keep in mind that we're speaking about Avi Tzadik Emes, the one that told the story. Arizal is the one that knows about these tzadikim because he himself is the one that is composed of all these midas, sfidas. We should be zecher to have